Beep, beep, beep. Yeah, that would be cool. That's my goal. It's to be so big that I have my own walk-up song for preacher. Yes. Are those 2 lemonades for you? Man, no one to say enough, man. Yeah, we are about to talk about just that. Oh, okay. Oh, you throw it back. Goes hard on the pink lemonade. Bananas. Uh. I know. Declan likes sandwiches, right? Declan, sandwiches? I'm live.
6 items. He likes 6 items.
You're the guy.
Declan, I need a list of the items you like.
Wait. I'm sorry. Like, are you the one that loves chicken fingers or doesn't like them?
Chicken strips are okay.
Okay, yes, but because, yeah. What? Yeah, pizza? Is pizza? Cheese pizza.
Pineapple pizza or no?
No! What? Blasphemy of the highest order.
Oh, man.
Well, you might as well stone me, bro. So.
Okie dokie. Well. Could you be louder, please?
You didn't see that or you would be laughing.
Right, yeah.
I almost fell down, Jared.
Oh, I would probably still be laughing. Just kidding. You are my whole world. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We are in Genesis chapter 32 this evening. Just to remind you, we actually tried to record at 4:30, but I guess it didn't work, so we are recording now. So I'll say the same thing I said to them. If you would, please make sure, look at your phones and make sure that they're off. That way we're not interrupted by something as annoying as that. But if the tornado sirens go off, we still won't be interrupted, but that'll be more annoying. So we are going to continue in Genesis chapter 32. When we last left our patriarch Jacob, he was fleeing our friend Laban. He had been in Laban's household for 20 years, and he had to flee Laban in the daytime because Laban was going to take care of his sheep. So Jacob fled, and whenever Laban caught up to the caravan, what was the most important thing that Laban thought he had been robbed of? Where are my gods? That's right. Okay, so Laban catches up to Jacob in his caravan and says, he pays some lip service to, how could you take my daughters? But also, where are my tiny solid men? And what does Jacob say? Okay, yes, yeah. So if you find it on anybody in my house, we will kill them. So as Laban kind of scouts out the camp, he enters whose tent? Whose tent does he enter? Rachel Cakes. Yep, that's right. And where are the idols?
Under her dress, but it's her time of month. She can't stay.
What? Yeah, well, yes, yeah. So they are under her, and of course, what is her excuse again? They're under her pillow, and what's the excuse?
Time of the woman.
It is my time of the month, Dad. So I possibly can't stand up for you to check under me for your idols. And as we talked about last week, if there was anything that makes a man uncomfortable, it is that conversation. And so Daddy says, sorry, dear, and leaves. And the idols stick with Rachel. Does anyone remember why the idols might have been so important? They're worth something, for sure. Yeah, they were taken from Dad's house, okay? And so whenever you take the idols from the household, What does that mean?
Basically taking the power. It's like a signal on it.
Yes, yeah. So it is basically the title deed to that household. So Rachel, while probably there's some, idolatry in there somewhere about why she took the idols, probably the primary reason was that if you had the gods, you had the inheritance. And so we see that Rachel is still in what we are going to lovingly refer to as Jacob mode. She is still in the mode of we have to survive, we have to get more and accumulate more. So she takes the gods in the hope that they can come back and get some inheritance once Laban passes. However, after this episode, Laban and Jacob make a covenant, but it's a very different kind of covenant than we usually see, mostly because we have seen covenants of parties that want to be together. We talked about most of the covenants that God makes with his people are very marital language, like you are going to be my partner, you are going to be my relationship that I have, very marital language. Whereas this particular covenant, anyone remember how we described it? Yes, if I see you again, it will be too soon. It is the covenant of the restraining order. It says if you come near me or I come near you, bad things are going to happen. And by all accounts, both Jacob and Laban abide by this covenant. This is actually going to be the last time we hear of our good friend Laban. The master deceiver goes off into the sunset, and we are left with our homeboy Jacob. So, Jacob wants to go back home, but who stands in his way? Brother Esau. When's the last time we saw Esau?
Was it when his mother died?
No, Rebecca hasn't passed yet.
Oh.
And in fact, we don't get a Rebecca narrative.
Oh, yeah.
What? 20 years ago, and what was Esau's general demeanor? Murderous rage is what we are told. Murderous rage. So, Jacob, to go back home, has to face his brother, whom he has not seen in 20 years, and he has no idea what Esau's attitude towards him is. So, we are going to read all of chapter 32 this evening, just because it is so good. We will break it up into pieces, though. So, we're going to start with the first part. Verse 1, Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of that place Manam. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight." And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking, if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then that camp will be left to escape. And Jacob said, "O God, my father Abraham, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred that I may do good, I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother and from the hand of Esau, for I fear him. Then that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude." So he stayed there that night. And from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove and drove." He instructed the first, "When Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are those ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third, all who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night at the camp. Verse 22, just a little bit. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. Okay, so what's weird about that? Yeah, okay, so very first, he meets with the angels of the Lord. What do you think is significant about that?
It's gotta be something with the ascending and descending.
Yes, yeah. So there's got to be something with Jacob's ladder. Okay, that episode is 20 years behind us, but he probably still remembers that pretty vividly. Who else got visited by angels? Abraham. Okay, so we know that this isn't out of the realm of possibilities for this family. What does he name the place? Yeah, okay, so Marama, God is in this place. It actually literally means 2 camps, okay? And in that instance, it means 2 camps, God's camp and my camp. What is ironic about that? So he admits that God is in this place. He admits this is God's camp and this is my camp. God is with me. And then does what? Very classic Jacob. He splits his camp in 2 and says, if Esau gets that one, at least this one will have time to escape. Okay? Who do you think was in the first camp? Yeah, so that was the answer we came to as well. Leah, probably all her kids, and he probably kept Rachel and Joe back in the second camp, maybe. So we're still dealing with a Jacob here. But what is ironic about this is that when we look at the distinction between these 2 episodes, God is in this place, but also I don't trust him. This is going to be exactly what James in the New Testament will refer to as being double-minded. Is I recognize that God is with me and that God is here, but I'm also going to do it my way. I'm also going to do it the world's way. So I understand that God is here and he will probably protect me, but just in case he doesn't, I'm going to help him out and split my camp in 2, sacrifice half of my people so that half of them can get away. Not very God's children-esque thing to do. So we're still learning. Jacob is still Jacob. All right? What else sticks out to you about this story?
It's really interesting that the servant exclusively returns and is saying Esau is coming with 400 men.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't, there's nothing about the description of the demeanor, who all is there, what they have with them. It's just, there's a large amount of men. Basically, he phrases it, hey, they're going to come kill you.
Yeah.
I wonder if the servant didn't even meet with Esau. He just saw him from a distance.
You know, I believe that's the case. Because I think that the servants that come with presents actually met with him. But here's an interesting thought. We all know kind of the end of the story, so I think we shade a little bit of what we think is going on here. What would you take a stab at Esau's demeanor? What do you think Esau's demeanor is?
You'll sneak around for him.
Bringing 400 men with you makes it seem like Esau's not over it. A lot of times we like to think, oh, Esau was over it the whole time, and it was just it's a silly, silly Jacob. And that's a fine thing to think, maybe, that Esau might have been over it the whole time. But we're not told that. So, yeah.
Esau already has a reputation for his temper.
Yes, absolutely. He can fly off the handle, for sure. And we know he's a man of the field, so his natural inclination is violence. It's kind of fun to think about. I haven't been convinced either way what Esau's demeanor is, but I tend to lean towards Esau still mad. And it's actually something that happens later that actually softens Esau's heart. But we're going to get to that. Something that is kind of hard to get in the English, obviously, but is pretty prevalent in the Hebrew, is that there's this linguistic triad going on, and this is going to come in later. But just so you're aware, the next chapter is all about the wrestling. Okay? So he wrestles, and we're going to analyze that. But the thing to look for is that the river he crosses is the Yabuk. Wrestling is pronounced Yakaved, and that is, and Jacob's name in Hebrew is Yaakov. Okay. All of those sound pretty familiar, or at least the same. They sound pretty much the same. It's kind of like homonyms. Homonyms sound the same, right? Yeah. There, and there. Yeah. It's kind of like there, and there. All right, but they're all Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. Okay, so if we're curious about who the main character is in this story, it's Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. All right, and this is actually going to come into play a little bit in the wrestling story, but I just wanted to put it up there up front so you can kind of recognize why this might be happening. But so he crosses the Yabuk, he Yakaveds, and he Yaakovs. Okay, fun, right? We all just learned a little Hebrew. So here's kind of what I was getting at. So this is the double-minded strategy, the paradox of Maham. Jacob names the place two camps after seeing God's messengers, but the irony is he sees God's camp and yet still splits his family in two for survival. He's still living between the divine presence and human schemes. He is truly the double-minded person. He interacts with God in a very personal way, and yet still Jacob's it all over the place. Okay? This is just kind of fun to recognize. What Jacob is doing here is what we would call a psychological assault of generosity. It's kind of like at Christmas whenever, what's more satisfying, whenever you get one big present or 20 small presents? Yeah, there's a present. There's a present. Oh, for me, there's a present. So that's kind of what Jacob is doing here. He's leaning on human nature, and he wants to put space in between each flock, so that the first one, Esau might be like, "Oh man, that's big." Then the second one's like, "Oh man, there's more." And the third one, you're just like, "Whoa!" Okay, he did exactly that noise. Okay. Plus, the language that he uses is forcing Esau to hear over and over again, "Your servant Jacob." Why might that be interesting? Your servant Jacob.
He knows he's made you mad. You know.
Yeah.
And he stole these birthrights, so he's just trying to lighten the blow.
Right, yeah, so he might be laying on the grease a little bit to smooth this out.
Wasn't Rebecca's dream that one would serve the other?
The older will serve the younger. Okay? I want to... this is so fun. Okay, so fun. Because there's a huge parallel here. All right? So he keeps saying, "Your servant Jacob, your servant Jacob." What is he giving him? Very generally, what is he giving him?
Lip service?
Stuff. He's giving him stuff and lip service. Okay? What was the first thing Jacob stole?
Stuff.
The stuff. He stole the birthright. Remember, that's why I emphasized this horizontal transaction in the very beginning. Okay? He stole the birthright. He stole the stuff. So what comparing this with your servant Jacob and all of this stuff, what is Jacob really doing?
Almost like giving him the birthright back.
Giving it back. I think you're exactly right. He's giving it back. Okay? What is so interesting about these stories is that whenever Jacob steals the birthright, we have a chapter in between it with the story of Isaac, and then we have the deception for the blessing. So now we bring it forward. Okay, so we've just done something with the birthright. So what should we expect? A story in the middle, and then the blessing. Okay? That's what we should expect. So let's look at the story in the middle. Okay. One more thing. This, in the Hebrew, it has a really weird obsession with the face. Okay? Jacob is very, not obsessed. He's very concerned about Esau's face. Why might he be concerned about Esau's face? There's actually a very weird description of Esau and when he's mad. And it's his face is filled with murderous rage. Okay? So, Jacob is terrified because the last time he saw Esau's face, it was filled with murderous rage. What is interesting is that this panim, that's face, obsession. In Genesis 32:20, it says, I will cover his face with the mincha, or the atonement gift, that goes before my face, and afterward I will see his face, and perhaps he will lift up my face. Okay? I promise these are all going somewhere, but I want you to keep in mind that Jacob is very concerned with face. Okay? Face, 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 face. All right. Now, this is, I don't want to hype it up too much, but this is probably my favorite story in the Bible ever. Because of just how crazy it is, but also how impactful it can be. Verse 22. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had, and Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. And then he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. All right, what questions do you have about that story?
Why does Jacob just randomly wrestle with this dude?
Okay, yeah, so first off, this is weird. Like, I've never been camping, but if I had, I don't, what?
You poor depraved thing.
Sure, yeah.
Fine.
I only remember once. What? Yeah, in a trailer. Okay, so I've never been real camping before. But if I had, I do not think if I was alone, my first inclination would be to wrestle a stranger. But maybe. I don't know. What other questions do we have?
Why did he stay behind?
Why did he stay behind? That's a really interesting question. Okay, he sends his family ahead of him and he stays behind. Yeah? What other questions do we have?
Just a really weird tidbit of why in the world they just said. That's why the Israelites don't eat the hip socket. It's kind of a weird thing to have.
Right, yeah, it is a weird, like a Levitical throwback to be like, and that's why we don't eat it, because that's where, it's like, and what a weird reason to not, yeah, I don't know. And be like, oh, we don't eat bacon because one time I got a cut on my arm. Like, that's weird. What else is weird?
He demanded a blessing.
Okay, so he demanded a blessing. All right, so if this is a stranger, why does he demand a blessing?
He's had to at least figured out who this might be.
Okay, so at some point, he has an inkling that this might be someone that can bless him. Okay, in this culture, you cannot bless someone unless they are above your station.
I mean, being able to dislocate a hip just by tapping it is a good indication.
Maybe. We don't know how hard that tap was. It could have been an elbow, you know? So, okay. What else is weird about this story?
They wrestled till daybreak.
That's a long wrestling match, okay? Yeah.
Were they exchanging words? Because I don't think it's stamina.
I know. Well, and it seems like they have a conversation a little bit in the middle of it. Yeah, uh-huh. Oh, come on. What else is weird?
Weird that he said that he had striven with God and with men and prevailed.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, I liked. Okay. So, striven with God and with men and prevailed. Okay. What else is weird?
If he already knew it was God, why did he ask his name?
Okay. So, if he knew it was God, why'd he ask his name? Okay.
And so one thing that's kind of interesting is why he knows it's God, and God is saying, "Let me go. It's almost daybreak. Like it's time to go." And Jacob's like, "No."
Okay. Yeah, Declan.
I do see a parallel to the previous blessing story, where he asks Jacob who he is, but he answers truthfully this time.
Okay. So, here's a couple of things. Okay, so who is the man?
God's angel.
Okay, God's angel. Who's the man? We're all good with God's angel?
Maybe God.
Maybe God? Maybe Jesus. Okay, so it kind of sounds like God in human form, which should sound familiar to us. Okay, maybe Jesus. Why do we think it's someone high up on the food chain?
Typically because of his response, saying he saw God.
Okay, yeah.
God and man.
Uh-huh. Has he seen God before? Who are the angels, do you think, in the first one? Okay, see, this is why this story is so fun, because none of it makes sense. So there is a huge treasure trove of rabbinical talk about what is happening here. A lot of it centers around is who is the man. Okay? And yes, by Jacob's response, a lot of us have been led, and this is a good answer. It's not. I'm not saying it's wrong. A lot of us have been led to think like this must be God. God either in the flesh, which maybe means Jesus, or just God, or an angel, something like that. But this is God. One thing that rabbis have noted about that linguistic triad that we talked about, Yabak, Yaakov, and Yaakov, is that it's all about Jacob. And I want to read one sentence from the beginning of the story. That same night he arose and took his wives and 2 female servants and 11 children and crossed the ford of the Abuk. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything that he had, and Jacob was left alone.
He wrestled himself.
Fight Club.
Yeah. So you can't talk about Fight Club, so he was alone. No. Some rabbis are going to say that there was 2 wrestling matches that night. One was with a man. And who might that be? Yaakov. He was wrestling with himself. This is the crucial pinpoint of Jacob's story. Who am I? Another question is, if this is God, as Declan pointed out, why does he ask him his name? Does God know your name? I would sure hope so. So why does God ask Jacob his name?
I think a similar reason to why he asked where Adam and Eve were at in the garden. He already knows, but he just wants them to respond.
Yes, and as Declan pointed out, who was the last person to ask Jacob his name?
Old dad.
Dad. And what did Jacob respond with? I'm Esau. A deception. This time, it's God. And he asks him, who are you? And Jacob is forced to confront, I am a deceiver. I am a heel holder. I am a usurper. God asks him his name so that he can face who he is. Okay? Then what happens? He changes it. God changes who he is and his identity. You are no longer Jacob, the usurper and the deceiver, but you are Israel, one who strives with man, yourself, Laban, and God, me. Why does God lose? How does God lose?
But being a dirty cheater.
No, that's how he wins. Why is he losing?
I would argue he doesn't lose, because that wasn't his intention to begin with.
I don't know. So check out this verse. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob. Why did God lose?
Man was heel holder.
I think Declan is onto something. Did he lose? He accomplished what he intended. What's super interesting about this is that I don't know when Jacob realized who this was, but I can only imagine that Jacob has him in a headlock, and the dude says, hey, it's almost breakfast time, let's quit. And he says, not until you bless me. And what is the blessing here?
It was changing Jacob.
Yeah, a name change. And not exactly like the name that you would think, but in any case, this struggle is a divine redo of Genesis 27. The man asks, who are you? And this time Jacob answers truthfully. No more masks. No more deceptions. I am naked in front of God. Okay? What's incredibly interesting about this is, who is he about to meet? Esau. What does this do to him? Humbles him, yeah. What are the two, before this happens, what are the two options Jacob has in Esau, in the situation with Esau? What are the two options? Fight or run. What does this do?
He ain't gonna run.
He ain't going to run, and he ain't going to fight. His only option now is to trust that God is still in the camp. He has no other options. If he runs, he ain't going to get far, and if he fights, he's going to lose. He's powerless. This is the moment with the name change and the limp that Jacob finally learns the harsh lesson that God has been trying to teach him this whole time. It's not you, it's me. It's not about how deceitful you can be. It's not about how clever you are. It is about me. Jacob is the supplanter defined by the grab and the theology of scarcity. Remember, this is a guy that's scared of losing it. He must accumulate more. He must have more. In fact, we talked about whenever he meets Rachel, the saddest part that he can think of is that I can't buy her because I don't have enough stuff. So I have to get more. I have to trick Laban with the flocks. I have to get all of my stuff out of there before Laban can take control of it. I gotta go. I gotta save my stuff. Instead, now he is Israel. He is the struggler, defined by the wrestle, but also with the theology of abundance. The struggle plus truth equals Israel. Now, to get applicable to us, this is one of my favorite stories and one of my favorite sermons I get to preach. I've preached it several times, and I love this story so much because we can look at Jacob and think, wow, what a transformation, but we also know, how do we wrestle with God now? In the heart? In the Word? God is always inviting you to wrestle. And what I love about this story is that what if we, every time we had an opportunity to wrestle with God, we acted more like Jacob and said, I don't care what happens, but I am going to be blessed by this interaction with God. I will get a blessing from this. Even if it means that whenever I walk away, it seems to the world like I'm weaker. Even if I have scars and brutal bruises to show it, I have wrestled with God. My favorite line from that sermon is, our relationship with God is not a tea party. It's a wrestling match. And that's the way God wants it. And whenever we bring this forward to what we're doing right now, it's about asking the tough questions. It's about analyzing things more deeply. It's about realizing that the people that God uses are deeply flawed humans, and so are we. But that doesn't discount us from the promise. It's a really cool story because if you do it right, if you wrestle with God correctly, you will always come away transformed and blessed, just like Jacob. One thing to note at the end of this story is that Jacob is still primarily referred to as Jacob, but I want you to try and notice whenever he's not. Okay? It's going to kind of go back and forth a little bit between Jacob and Israel. So keep that in mind and try and figure out why that might be. When is he referred to as Israel?
When he's doing
And
something good.
okay, so usually it is. Usually whenever he's doing something good, he's Israel. Or usually whenever he's being a spiritual head, he's Israel. But whenever he's doing something very Jacoby, he's always referred to as Jacob. Okay? So, any more questions or concerns about that story? Don't be fooled. Just like Jacob's wrestling match with God, whenever he forces Jacob to confront who he is as a person, God does that to us as well. Wrestling matches aren't easy. In fact, we saw that they wrestled till daybreak. That's a long time. That is a long wrestling match.
Maybe they stopped and had some tea time. Let's get
Yeah, right, yeah, but now we should really, try and get yeah. All right. So, we're not going to read Jacob and Esau's encounter, but anyone kind of know a little bit about what happened?
Basically, Jacob falls down, lowers his face, and Esau runs to him, and he himself is weeping, he's crying.
Yes, yeah. So it's a very Hallmark-esque moment. Both brothers come together. Jacob bows before Esau 7 times. Everybody's crying. Everybody's hugging. It's a very nice moment. What I like about this is probably one verse in verse 11. We'll start in verse 10, though. Jacob said, "No, please," he's talking to Esau here, "if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it. What pops out at you about those 2 verses?
I have to think that's enough.
That's the big transformation. We go from a Jacob who can never have enough. He's so ambitious. He's a heel holder. And now we move into this guy who says, "Take it. I have enough." What else sticks out at you?
But he said, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God.
Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. Why is this ironic?
Just saw.
Because I was just there. I just saw the face of God, and I see it in you. He sees in his enemy the face of God. Let's pretend for a moment that I'm right, and Esau is ticked still. What do you think changes his mind? Do you think it's the gifts?
Probably warmed him up a little bit.
Yeah, probably not a bad touch.
It could be the motivation behind the gifts, because Esau saw Jacob previously taking everything, and then Esau sees the change of character.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I think that's part of it. I think it definitely warms him up. I think Esau gets what's going on here, that he's trying to give back the birthright.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, the thing that Esau was never, I mean, the story to read, super ticked about losing the stuff.
Yeah.
Because he gave it up. It was the blessing that got him.
Yes, it was the blessing that really made him fly off the handle.
And saying basically, I see God in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty huge.
Hey, wow.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that blessing.
Do you think that you would have forgiven, per se, Jacob, if you were Esau and you had the type of temper, especially, that he had? He's carrying a grudge.
I think you're right. So here's what I think Esau thought he was going to see. I think Esau thought he was going to see Jacob, his brother, as he usually was. Defiant stride, chest puffed out, ready to fight. Who does he see?
Humbling man bowing.
Okay, are you going to beat that guy up? Probably soften the ground a little bit to know that, well, if I really take it out on him, that nobody's going to be writing stories about that fight. I think that God saved Jacob's life here. In a very weird way. By making him weaker. Sometimes, and by sometimes I mean almost always, God does this in Scripture and in life. Many times, the weaker you are, the stronger God becomes in your life. God saves Jacob by giving him a limp. I think that's why it's important to the Israelite people to remember. I think that's why there's that weird little callback about that's why we don't eat the thing of the thigh. It's because it's to remind ourselves the weaker we are, the stronger God can act. Verse 11, please accept my blessing that is brought to you because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have enough. We already said that I have enough kind of jumps out at us. What other word might jump out at you? Why?
Because that's what he took from him initially.
And if we're really looking at the parallels, that shouldn't surprise us. We have the birthright. He tries to give away the birthright. Weird story in the middle. He tries to give back the blessing. He doesn't try and give back the covenant, but he tries to give back the blessing. And I think that is what seals the deal for Jacob and Esau. Jacob tries to give everything back. Weirdly, here it is. Jacob's way is to take the Baccarat, to stand over his brother, and hide behind a mask. Israel's way is to give it back. He bows 7 times and comes at him with a vulnerable limp. We all know that 7 is the number of perfection and absolute completion, which means to bow 7 times means absolute submission. Absolute, you are greater. Jacob physically undoes the theft of lordship. 7 bows to signal total submission. The heel grabber has become a giver. He finally has enough. He has finally learned the lesson that God has been trying to teach him for about 6 chapters and 20 years. But now we have a problem. In verse 16 it says, and Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padar Aram, and he camped before the city. And the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. And there he erected an altar and called it El Ohi Israel. What's the problem with that?
Wandering is good, settling is bad.
No!
Also, he kind of did another deception because his brother said, I'm going to meet you up there, and he didn't meet him up there.
Yeah, so that is one thing that we need to talk about. So the rest of the story is Esau says, hey, why don't you come with me? And Jacob, classic Jacob, says, I don't think so. I have frail children, and I can't move as fast as you, so why don't you keep going, and I'll catch up with you. And then immediately buys land and says, I got him. But there is a good lesson to be learned there, and that is just because there's reconciliation doesn't mean there's sameness. Okay? What do we know about Esau? He's still a man of the field. And Jacob is still a man of the tent. They cannot coexist in the same place. Esau needs to go one way, and Jacob needs to travel with another partner. We're going to see that God does not forget Esau, but Jacob needs to go a different direction, and he knows that. So he does. But the last part is even more troubling. He settles. No! And we actually see this a lot in the patriarchs. We always see this like huge moment of spiritual conquering and great, wonderful story, and then followed almost directly on the heels a mistake. And this mistake, we know from our study in Genesis, settling is bad. And he bought land. And he built an altar. What's the only land this family is supposed to have right now?
Burial.
Yes, the tomb where everybody's buried. That's it. Unfortunately, we are going to see that this has some pretty dire consequences. We've got 10 minutes. I don't know what that bell was for. So we're gonna try and get this going here. We are gonna look at this is Not a fun story. This is kind of the most hideous of all human nature that we can think of. Some of your headings are going to be, I like to call it the breach at Shechem, but some of your translations are going to call it the defilement of Dinah, or even more harsh, the rape of Dinah. Okay? We're not going to shy away from the story just because it makes us uncomfortable. The Bible is supposed to do that. So we are going to go ahead and read it, and we're going to talk about it. And there's some interesting dynamics between the Eastern and Western way of looking at this that we need to talk about. All right? So verse 1, now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. What's wrong with that?
They're not, people of God. They're not family. They're others.
What do we know that God's people aren't supposed to do with the Canaanites? Mingle. That's right. So, dad makes the first mistake. He buys land, and now daughter wants to go meet the neighbors. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, Get this girl for my wife. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled the daughter of Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until the time came, or until they came. What's wrong with that?
Just had to wait till back at the wrath. It's a little crazy.
Who's in charge? If I were to tell you a patriarch of a family asleep at the wheel, who should come to your mind in the Genesis narrative? And Isaac, kind of, but I'm going to go with Noah. Because the parallels here are a little bit crazy. Because then, who gets them in trouble? The sons. When the patriarch is asleep at the wheel, there is always a power vacuum, and that will be filled many times by the sons. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing must not be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to be his wife. Make marriages with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it. Shechem also said to her father and her brothers, Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you ask to me I will give. Ask for me the great bride price, and gift you as you will, and I will give you whatever you say to me. We don't have time to read the whole thing. So anyone know what happens? What is the great bride price that they ask? Okay, yep, If you want to be part of this family, you got to go through some surgery, okay? Then what happens? Honestly, I'm going to give you the next clue. In the surprise to everyone, they're like, okay. I don't think that would be my first reaction. But okay, so they say okay.
Actually, says they were delighted.
Yeah, they were like, ooh, that's easy. Yeah, we don't need stuff. We can just go through some incredibly painful surgery. All right. Then what? What? So all the men are sore. Anyone want to guess what day they attack them on?
Saturday?
No, not day of the week. Tuesday the 24th. Right, yeah. Not day of the week, but from surgery to attack. How many days do you think? That's what you would think. That's what you would think. What is it actually, Declan? Third day. If anything big is going to happen in Jewish culture, it's going to happen on the third day. Just going to let you know that right up front. And this is no different. They are in Jewish culture, and they know if you want something big to happen, Got to wait till the third day. So they do. Apparently, that is not enough time to heal. They are still quite sore, and all of the men are killed. This is by Simeon and Levi. Okay, Simeon and Levi are the masterminds behind this. They go and kill every man, and then take all the women and children. This would probably not mean that they are concubines or anything, but rather slaves. Okay, so Simeon and Levi kill them all, take them as slaves. Jacob is upset, and in verse 30 it says, "Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, 'You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land. The Canaanites and the Pezerites, my numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household.' But they said, 'Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?'" Okay, so a nation defeating their enemies and taking slaves. Who does that sound like? At the very least, everybody else. In this act, who have they become?
Everything which they sought to destroy.
The Canaanites! Man, it's almost like God knew what he was talking about when he said, don't intermingle with them. Because when they do, even one daughter for like 30 minutes, they go absolutely beast mode. It's very interesting that Simeon and Levi seem to have taken some lessons from Daddy Dearest, because how do they trick him? With a lie. In the Western view, we are really going to focus on individual justice for Dinah. We are going to say, what is fair for the punishment of the crime? And many times we're going to say, well, this is just a story about what goes around comes around. That's not the story, okay? This is about the house. The central issue is defilement. Assimilation is seen as a boundary breach that threatens the covenantal seed. Remember, after they take Dinah, they do not give her back, by the way. They take her. It takes killing them to get her back. They say to themselves, or they say to Jacob, you take our daughters too, and we'll take your daughters, and we'll assimilate. And then they even say, look how much stuff Jacob has. If we can get into his family, we'll get that stuff and combine ourselves and be one great giant people. That's what they want. And that's the fear of Simeon and Levi. Don't get me wrong, they're not thrilled what happened to their sister. And as well they should not be. What happened to Dinah was 100% not her fault. I'm not saying she was asking for it or anything like that. She did not deserve what happened to her. But it all started whenever they settled. It all started when they said, we are going to be acting like the Canaanites. As we go forward, what I love about this is that they use a very interesting weapon. I really like this because it's the way of the serpent. What is the way of the serpent? Not saying enough, but also deceit. What is the first thing the snake does to Eve? Deceives her. Using what? God's own law. He lies to her with God's own law. What do Simeon and Levi do? Lie to them using God's own law. Circumcision. If lying was bad, using God's circumcision, holy sign to do it, extra bad. Rabbi Foreman suggests Shechem attempts to buy the Abrahamic line via dowry, bypassing legal consent. What Jewish readers are going to be really concerned about is that the Canaanites were trying to buy their way into the covenant. All of this starts with Jacob asleep at the wheel. But what's cool about these parallels is that what happens to Noah after his debacle? Nothing. We don't hear a word about Noah except for he lived 300 years and died. What happens to Jacob? He turns it around. One of the biggest lessons from that chapter that we sometimes overlook is they recover. And this actually leads to a huge moment of repentance. They throw their idols away. They start to take the covenant more seriously. And Jacob is actually renamed Israel again to affirm the promise. But that's all stuff for next week. Are there any questions or concerns about that story? I don't want to leave that story hanging because I know it can be tough. Okay, all right, let's finish out in a prayer and then we'll head out. Father, we love you and we thank you so much for this time that we've had to study your word, study such a incredible character of yours, Jacob. We ask that what we see in him, we can also see in ourselves, his flaws, but also his boldness for you. God, we ask that we take lessons from his life that we can apply to our lives and know that whenever we wrestle with you, we can be changed through you.